We've all heard the term dementia, but not everybody really understands what it is. The word comes from, I think it's the Greek. De means away, and mentia comes from mentis, which is mind. So basically the mind is going away. It's also known as the long goodbye, because people's personality seems to change as they lose their memories and they get disorientated, and who they are starts to be lost. It's a really distressing thing for them and for those around them who love them. But let's get into what dementia really means. There are several types of dementia. They all have some things in common. One is that they all involve a deterioration in the physical structure of the brain. And that happens for various reasons, which we'll get onto in a moment. But all of them involve a deterioration in the brain and the nervous system. They all involve memory loss. They all involve a degree of confusion. They all involve disorientation to time, to place, and to person. And they all follow a deteriorating course and will eventually result in death. When I talked about recovery earlier, I wasn't really talking about the dementias. We have medications that can slow down the progress of dementias, or at least some of them, and we have ways that we can help people to feel better and to enjoy a longer quality of life. But ultimately, dementia is a terminal illness. There are several types of dementia. The most common by far in this country is Alzheimer's dementia. That's a slow deterioration in the brain. It's a slow, gradual change. It's if you were to plot the decline on a graph, it would be a fairly straight line all the way down from top to bottom until eventually that person's nervous system just gives out. And remember, the nervous system is the thing that controls your autonomic function, like heartbeat and breathing, and effectively the central nervous system will close down and that person will die. Alzheimer's is characterized by those issues that I've spoken of earlier. So it's confusion, disorientation, memory loss. You also can get that very marked personality change where people can become extremely irritable, they can become aggressive, and indeed people often go through stages where their personality will take on different features, different characteristics as the disease progresses. On a CT scan, you can look at the brain and you can see little growths in the brain which are known as amyloid plaques. We don't really know what they do, but we know that they're present in Alzheimer's dementia, and that's one of the ways that Alzheimer's can be diagnosed. Something that looks like Alzheimer's but isn't is Lewy body dementia. It also looks like Parkinson's. It's called Lewy body because you find Lewy bodies in the brain, which is another type of cellular change that wouldn't normally be there in a healthy brain. Lewy body has a similar deteriorating course to Alzheimer's, in that on a graph it also looks like a straight line downwards from top to bottom, from what would it be, right to left, left to right. But it also has features of Parkinsonism. So you may get the tremor, the clumsiness, you'll get failing eyesight, all of the symptoms that you would get with Parkinson's. In fact, one of the ways that you can distinguish between Lewy body and Parkinson's itself is which came first. If the Parkinsonian symptoms come before the dementia, then what you're looking at is Parkinson's dementia. If the dementia symptoms come before the Parkinson's, then you're looking at Lewy body dementia. In every other respect, it's very much like Alzheimer's, except for the Parkinsonian symptoms, which is just an extra kick in the teeth for the person who's already suffering enough, in my view. Bear in mind that people with Alzheimer's or with Lewy body will also experience anxiety and depression, and very often psychosis, and get particularly distressed as a result of that, on top of the confusion and the disorientation and the feeling of isolation because they don't recognise anyone, or the outrage because somebody's claiming to be their son or their daughter when that's not my son. It's a truly horrendous state to be in. Another form of dementia is called vascular dementia. You may have heard the term CVA, or cerebrovascular accident. That's a stroke. What happens is that blood vessels into the brain get blocked by the build-up, the residue inside the blood vessel. It flakes off and gets caught and blocks that blood vessel, which stops the blood, the nutrients, the oxygen getting to a certain part of the brain, and that part of the brain subsequently dies. And once that brain matter's gone, it ain't coming back. So people lose function depending upon what area of the brain has been damaged by that stroke, that cerebrovascular accident. Over time, as people have more and more strokes, they lose more and more function, and all of the problems associated with the other dementias will come to the fore. But on a graph, the decline is different. It's not a straight line. It's actually what we call a stepwise decline, because on a graph, that person is fine, they're fine, then they have a stroke, they go down, lose function, but they maintain where they are for a bit till the next stroke they go down, and then they lose function, and then they maintain where they are a bit more, then they go down, and so on. So you end up, if you were to plot it on a graph, it's a set of steps, and that's one way that you can spot cerebral dementia, or vascular dementia as it's known, is that stepwise deterioration. There are two others that I want to talk to you about, but they're much rarer than the ones I've mentioned. The first of these is called frontotemporal dementia, or Pick's disease. It affects inhibition much, much earlier. So, for example, someone might appear totally functional and go to work and then suddenly take their clothes off and urinate in the office, for example, and not realise that there's a problem with that. People with frontotemporal dementia, also known as Pick's disease, can get into all sorts of difficulties because of the lack of inhibition, which often is the first symptom that people see. So they just look like completely inappropriate people. Korsakoff's dementia. If you think about the nerves in your brain and nervous system, they're a little bit like electrical wires, like the wires in a plug. And if they're the three wires in a plug, they're insulated with a plastic coating, aren't they? So you've got the copper wire, and then you've got a plastic coating, and that insulates each wire from its neighbours, so you don't get a crossing over of electrical current from one wire to the next. You don't get a short circuit, in other words. The nerves in your brain are the same. They're insulated not by plastic coating, but by what we call a myelin sheath. and myelin is created through the use of vitamin B. Guess what alcohol destroys? Apart from serotonin, which we mentioned earlier, it also destroys vitamin B, which is why people who drink really heavily for long enough can end up with a drinker's dementia known as Korsakoff's. The defining feature with that is what we call confabulation, which is that the demented person with Korsakoff's will absolutely sincerely tell you things that you know are not true. They will tell you, for example, about the shopping trip they've just made to Tesco's when you know that they've been sat in that chair all morning, but they believe it. There's no point in calling them out on it because they'll just think that you're calling them a liar when they're being honest. But that's one of the defining features, it's the defining feature really, for Korsakoff's dementia is confabulation. None of the dementias can be cured, they can all be treated to a degree, but really there's not much we can do except try and give people as much of a quality of life as we can whilst we wait for the inevitable.